Okay, so let's take a look here at the syntax of PL. Now, this particular slide of the important concepts is, in a way, maybe the most important slide, because if you know each of these elements of PL, then you essentially understand PL. So it's a good one to kind of keep coming back to. So we're going to go over it real quick before we go over the practice problems. The first thing I want to say here is about sentence letters. These are actually the exact same sentence letters as from TL. They just basically carried over. That's because anything that PL can do, anything that TL can do, PL can do. So basically, if you want to represent, for example, Alice is at the beach, that proposition could be just an A. That is still possible in this language. However, we won't actually be using sentence letters in this class, only because the transition from TL to PL was to reap the expressive power, the benefits of the expressive power of PL, right? So we don't want to hamstring ourselves by still by making ourselves or letting ourselves still use sentence letters. So at least in this class, we're not going to be using them. They are part of the system, but we won't be really using them. Okay, now let's look at predicate letters. Predicate letters are, in a sense, kind of the one of the most powerful aspects of PL. Predicate letters in PL correspond to general terms in a natural language. Now remember, general terms are things that can apply to many different things. And I think it's helpful to think about them in terms of open sentences. So for example, here's an open sentence: is blue, blank is blue. The way we create an open sentence is we take a regular atomic sentence and we just take out the subject. So this open sentence, is blue, with the general term blue in there, is sort of what a predicate letter stands for in PL. You can essentially fill that, that blank with many different things to complete that sentence. Let's just say you want to say Garcia's shirt is blue. There you go, simple as that. Or you want to say Brenda's car is blue. There you go. In each of these cases, the predicate letter is this capital B right here. And the reason why there is a prime next to each of these predicate letters is because there's always something that gets filled in. That's sort of like the blank from the open sentence. And you're supposed to fill that in with something to complete it. I don't know, Elizabeth's binder is blue, whatever. So those are predicate letters. And they're always capitalized. So I know that's kind of weird for people, but they are always capitalized. So something to get used to here. Okay, predicate letters is that. Individual terms is next. Now these are all lowercase letters. Now notice for predicate letters, you're allowed to go from A through Z. And if you run out, you can start using, you can start using subscripts. But that won't happen in this class. But for individual terms, you can only go from A through V. Now, there's a reason for that, and we'll talk about that in a second. But individual terms are from A through V, and they're all lowercase, and maybe paradoxically, these are what correspond to singular terms in natural language. So singular terms in natural language, in case you forgot from the important concepts section, is well, they correspond to one of two things: either proper names or definite descriptions. Now, let's just say that I'm speaking about Diego Rivera, the guy, the artist who was married to Frida Kahlo. That's a proper name, right? So that's definitely in this camp right here. Or let's just say that I'm talking about, I don't know, Margaret Thatcher's first husband, whatever. That's a definite description. I don't even know the guy's name. I don't, so the best I can possibly say is, oh yeah, Margaret Thatcher's first husband. But there's only one person that corresponds to, right? So the idea here is these are singular terms. There's only one when I say Diego Rivera, there's only one human that I'm talking about. When I say Margaret Thatcher's first husband, again, only one human that I have in mind. Or I can say it about an object too, Bob Marley's first guitar. I don't know what it was, but I know there must have been a first guitar for Bob Marley. So for those, you use lowercase a through V, all right? So Diego Rivera is right there, Diego Rivera, lowercase d. Margaret Thatcher's first husband, how about we just use a lowercase m? That's fine. So that's perfectly acceptable. And I know it's a little weird that, proper names are represented as lowercase letters in PL, but the expressive power of PL really comes from the predicates. So that's one reason why that is the case. Okay. So with that said, let me erase this here. The next thing we have to talk about, well, let me mention very briefly the individual variables. And while we're at it, the quantifiers. So the individual variables and the quantifiers, we're not going to talk about very much yet, but these will be they'll be used together. And that's why we don't use W, X, Y, and Z for individual terms. Those 4 letters are reserved for variables. Now, again, just like in predicate letters and individual terms, if you run out, you can use subscripts, but we won't ever do that in this class. And yeah, so essentially, once you start using quantifiers, you essentially need to pair each quantifier with a variable, and then use that variable to pair the quantifier to some predicate letters. So I don't know what this says, right? I haven't assigned any meanings to P or L, but the idea here is that these variables get paired with this quantifier. So that's the idea. But we'll talk more about that when we introduce quantifiers later. Let's just talk about 2 more things here, and then we'll do some practice problems. These are carryovers from TL. Now, these are the truth functional connectives or operators that you know and love, and they stand for the exact same things. So now if you want to say, I don't know, Diego Rivera was a painter and Margaret Thatcher was prime minister, I had to use a different letter than P. We couldn't use prime minister or P for prime minister because I already used it for painter. But notice here that we're able to use, just like before, our truth functional connectives. Same function, right? So that's back. And we're still using our grouping indicators, parentheses, and brackets. So, one other thing. We are still using also curly braces to represent the content of sets. So that also carries over. Okay. So all of that is some important things to know about PL, all the elements of PL, the syntax of PL. Let's do some practice problems. Okay, so these are all from Herrick. I actually really like his book in general, so I tend to borrow from him a lot. But let's just take a look at these and see how to translate them from English to PL. So, Grandpa Munster banks at the blood bank. Okay, so notice that banking at the blood bank is the predicate, or banks at the blood bank, right? So you can basically eliminate the subject there, Grandpa Munster, which is a person. You can eliminate that. Let's pretend to eliminate it right now, and just have a blank there instead, and you can fill it with a whole bunch of other stuff, right? You can say Mindy banks at the blood bank, and I don't know, Eddie Munster, is that the little kid's name? Whatever. The idea here is that we clearly have 2 elements in this sentence. There is the subject, Grandpa Munster, and the predicate, banks at the blood bank. And that predicate isn't, it can be applied to many people. It's a general term. So Grandpa Munster is a first or a proper name, so that's a singular term. And banks at the blood bank is a general term, so we use a predicate letter for that one. So first thing you have to do is choose what do you want to represent Grandpa Munster as? You have the letters A through V to choose from, what sounds good? How about G? That makes sense to me. So G stands for Grandpa Munster. And how about the general term banks at the blood bank? Well, B sounds pretty obvious. So why don't we use that? How do you read this? Grandpa Munster banks at the blood bank. That's the idea. Okay, let's keep going here. Wimpy likes hamburgers and Popeye likes spinach. How about we first figure out what kind of compound or what kind of sentence this is? If you notice, this is a truth functional compound. You are saying two things. You're saying something about Wimpy and then something about Popeye. So essentially for number 2, what we're looking at here is some sort of conjunction. So on the one hand, we're talking about Wimpy, and on the other hand about Popeye. All right, so now we pick an individual constant for Wimpy. But remember, we can only use A through V, and W is after V, right? W is technically for variables. So we actually can't use a W here. So what can we do? Well, I just always go to the second letter. So I'm going to use I for Wimpy. And how about for Popeye? We can use a P. That's totally fine. Likes hamburgers. How about H for likes hamburgers? And likes spinach, well, S sounds like it makes sense. So there you go. How do we read this? Well, we say Wimpy likes hamburgers and Popeye likes spinach. And then the main operator is at ampersand, so it is a truth functional compound. Okay, simple as that, right? Okay, let's do one more here, and then I'll let you have some fun with the other ones. 3. If Mo is happy, then Curly is happy and Larry is happy. Clearly a Three Stooges reference there. Okay, so I see a lot of is happy, right? So clearly that's a general term, and I don't know why that's capitalized, but a lot of general terms there. And that means that they can all be represented by the same letter. So how about H for that? Okay, so we're going to use an H for that. But before anything, I do think it's important to recognize, we have another truth functional compound. It's an if-then statement. So why not already draw the horseshoe in there? It's saying if Mo is happy, then Curly is happy and Larry is happy. So we have also an ampersand there, right? So if Mo is happy, then Curly is happy and Larry, that's a lowercase l, is happy. So that's what's being said there. By the way, 2 is a party, so we need a grouping indicator here, and it'll also make it, more readable. So what do we have here? Well, if it is the case that Mo is happy, then it's the case that Curly is happy and Larry is happy, right? And again, it's a truth functional compound. The horseshoe is the main operator here. And that's how you do some of these.